Hey everybody, what's happening? It is Chris Fitzpatrick once again on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know it's been a little while since the last time I posted a video. I promise to make this one worth it. So thanks for tuning in, checking us out on YouTube here. Please do me a favor, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the bell so that way you are up to date when some new content comes out. New topics I'm going to be exploring all the time. If you have a question that you'd like to see me tackle here on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks, you can put it in the comments section, hit me up on social media, let me know any way you can reach me. I love fielding questions here on the channel, so just let me know what you want to know, and your question might be featured on a future episode of Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. Also, don't forget, you can find me on social media on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me, follow, whatever it is you want to do. These videos always become newsletters on LinkedIn as well. So if you subscribe to the newsletter on LinkedIn, it's a great way to not only have access to the video on YouTube, but to also get the write-up and some of the additional thoughts and comments there as well. So today, I want to tackle a leadership topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's a topic I'm very passionate about. For those of you who followed me a little bit, you know I like to talk a lot about leadership, and some of the topics that have come up in the past are going to come up again today. But we're going to talk about leadership and management, and then I'm going to provide what to me are 5 indispensable key characteristics of outstanding leaders. This is a topic that I've wrestled with for many years. I was a student leader in college at Montclair State University, so I tried to develop a lot of these skills. Some of them I didn't develop until much later. Throughout my professional life, I've held a variety of leadership roles, and then, of course, I studied organizational leadership in my master's program with the University of Arizona. So I've written a lot of papers, I've read a lot of papers, I've listened to podcasts and videos, and if there is one thing that I've learned about key characteristics of leaders, that is that it is hard to agree upon them. It is very subjective. A lot of people have different opinions of what makes a great leader. I think when we ask somebody to provide an example of when they think of a great leader, who comes to mind, I think a lot of us will come up with historical leadership figures who tended to be very charismatic. They tended to be great orators. In many cases, they were very extroverted. And while that works for the archetype that we have in our mind, I think there's a common misconception that great leaders have to be charismatic or have to be extroverted when they actually don't. Some of the best leaders I've ever worked with in my life have been introverted and have been individuals who didn't rely necessarily on an overabundance of charisma, but were still outstanding leaders because they possessed many of the 5 characteristics that I'm going to cover today. So because this is so subjective, I also want to invite you to share your comments and share your thoughts. You might disagree with me. You might think I missed one. You might have a different top 5. Let's keep this conversation going. I don't pretend to be the end-all be-all expert on this topic. In fact, I think half the fun is having a discussion and a discourse about it. So let me know in the comments section what you think about my top 5. First things first, though, I want to cover the idea of leadership and management. Now, one of the things that we have learned about leadership and management is that they are neither mutually inclusive nor mutually exclusive, which means they're not joined at the hip. Somebody does not have to be a great leader and a great manager, and in fact, somebody doesn't need to be either. And there are 4 quadrants that I use to illustrate leadership and management skill. And what we notice is that in organizations, people in all 4 of these quadrants have value and can make an impact. This is not to say that people within certain quadrants here are inherently good or bad. They're not. There's value in each one. So it all depends on what your acumen is, what your skill set is, and then how you work on and how you develop those skill sets to maybe move into other quadrants. You're also not born there and then just stay there for the rest of your life. There's a lot of opportunity to move into some of the different quadrants. So in quadrant number 1, this is the individual with a low level of leadership, but a high level of management skill. And this is the individual I refer to as the taskmaster. This is somebody who's very good at getting tasks accomplished. They are clear communicators. They often know what needs to be done. They understand the metrics behind job performance, and they're able to provide that drive forward, very specific. This is what has to get done. You all need to get this done. Focus and follow the directions. And that can be very effective in certain situations. I think when we think of historical leadership, when we go back several decades, 70, 80 years, to a more assembly line and factory-driven sort of a workspace, not that those don't still exist today, of course they do, but when we think about the second industrial revolution, this was a very common type of leadership that we saw, where it was very much based on inputs and outputs, and it was very much focused on what you could get done in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, and that's what determined value. Certainly, leadership science has evolved since then. We've learned so much more about what it takes to be a really great leader, but there are certainly situations in which tasks just need to get accomplished where somebody in this quadrant can provide a great deal of value. Quadrant number 2, this is the individual who is both high in leadership and high in management, and I simply refer to this quadrant as the effective leader quadrant. These are the individuals who are task-oriented enough to know what needs to get done and to be able to direct people in such a way to get it done, but they also have that leadership skill and other key qualities that create this sense of inspiration and a shared vision, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. This is where I think people who want to be in leadership roles and who take leadership very seriously, they strive to be in quadrant number 2. Quadrant number 3, this is somebody who is low management, low leadership, and this is the individual contributor. And the fact is, there is tremendous value in quadrant number 3. Not everybody seeks out leadership roles. Not everybody wants to be there. A lot of folks are very happy being outstanding individual contributors and subject matter experts who don't want to direct, lead, or manage other people. What we hope is that the folks in quadrant 3 are really coachable. They're able to be led, and that they will provide their best effort in any of the situations that they're in. But many of our organizational efforts are really driven by these individual contributors who don't lead others, but are able to be led and can get tasks accomplished. And then quadrant number 4 is really interesting. This is what I refer to as the inspirer. Now, the inspirer is high leadership, but low management. And this is often somebody who has leadership acumen or skill, but doesn't possess a management job title. They're not a boss. They don't necessarily supervise other people, but because they have leadership skills, they do inspire others to either perform their tasks at a higher level, or they learn from that individual, or they're able to be mentored by that individual. Mentorship, of course, a major topic here on the Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks channel. We have a webinar coming up in just a couple weeks on that topic, as a matter of fact. And if it's after that, then you can find that webinar on the channel as well with some really great information. So now, with that said, you see the 4 quadrants here of leadership and management, and how folks can be in different buckets and different quadrants at different times. And again, we move throughout these quadrants. Situations can put us in different quadrants. I'm a big believer in the idea of situational leadership, and there might be situations that call on somebody to be more of a taskmaster, and there may be situations that call upon an individual to be more of an individual contributor. So we can move through these quadrants in different situations as well. Now, my top 5 characteristics of outstanding leaders, and again, I expect this is going to be a little bit controversial, but my top 5 indispensable characteristics of leaders, number 1 is trustworthiness. And that is my non-negotiable, absolute number 1 answer, to use the Family Feud term. I think that for somebody to be able to lead others, they have to be trustworthy. You have to be able to trust that somebody has the best interest of the team, the organization, and the outcomes in mind in order to really follow them. And there are plenty of examples of when trust erosion has created situations where the leadership just loses their team. They can no longer lead effectively because their team doesn't trust them. Trust takes a long time to build, and it takes just moments to break. You heard me use that exact terminology also when we talk about building your personal brand. So much of your personal brand is predicated on how much people trust you. When they look at you, when they speak to you, do they believe what you're saying? Do they believe in what you're doing? Do they think that you are trustworthy? So trustworthiness, critical. If you read anything by Patrick Lencioni, of course, I highly recommend The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. When you look at the pyramid and the model that's used in that book by Patrick Lencioni, the base, the foundation of that model is trustworthiness. And if you take that away, the entire structure crumbles. Number 2, and this is a term that you've heard me use a lot in these videos, and that is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a critical skill set for leaders. I value it above IQ and intelligence in terms of cognitive skill. I think the ability to show empathy, to be empathetic to other people, that is so critical in today's leadership. I think the ability to understand other people and to be flexible with how you approach situations, using that empathy to inform you, that is a tremendous skill for modern leaders. So is self-awareness, which is another massive component of emotional intelligence. The more self-aware leaders are, the more they are able to pivot, the more flexible they are, the more agility they have in their leadership approach to different situations and different people. Less rigidity when there's a greater understanding of self. And then, of course, that leads to greater self-management, greater social awareness, greater social management. The other thing about emotionally intelligent leaders is I think they're really adept and equipped with the skills necessary to create a culture of psychological safety. This is a term I found myself using a lot lately, especially in DEI circles and diversity and inclusion circles, with the idea that if you create a culture of psychological safety, it equips an organization's talent to be able to bring their whole, authentic, full selves to the workplace, and that fosters innovation. So number 2 is emotional intelligence. Number 3 is communication. Communication has been a component of almost every topic I've spoken about on this channel. I always say that there are 4 major types of communication: verbal communication, nonverbal communication, written communication, and listening communication. And an effective leader needs all 4 of them. They have to be able to speak words that are clear, to provide instruction, direction, and share a vision. But if their nonverbal communication runs antithetical to their verbal communication, it creates a mixed message. It can create confusion, or at worst, a belief that that leader's being inauthentic or not trustworthy, as we talked about just a moment ago. Written communication, very similar. They have to be able to provide good written communication to the team, whether it's instructions, whether it's feedback, whether it's follow-up, or just checking in with them. And then listening skills. I said this many, many times. Check out my video on impactive listening, but listening skills might be the most critical leadership skill outside of trustworthiness. If you don't listen to your team, if you don't listen to what's going on around you and understand it and actively participate in the act of taking in information, then you never know if you're going to be losing your team. You might be missing out on some major cues there. So listening skills are very important in communication, which is, of course, a critical key component of leadership. So after communication, actually, before we leave communication, I also want to bring up one of my favorite books that I like to reference is The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner. And with The Leadership Challenge, the authors talk about the importance of diverse voices. Part of communication is also being able to source opinions, voices, and ideas from a diverse group of people, so that way you don't find yourself in an echo chamber. You don't want to be in a situation where people are just saying yes to the loudest voice in the room because they don't want to deal with conflict or because they don't feel comfortable or psychologically safe providing their opinion. That's another piece to the communication puzzle, is ensuring that the communication that you're getting, the information you're getting, come from a variety of different people with a variety of different backgrounds. Number 4 is accountability. Now, accountability, I do want to make clear, doesn't necessarily mean blame or punishment, right? It doesn't mean strictly something went wrong and I need to find out who it was and I need to hold that person accountable. I think that's a part of it, but it's a small part of the accountability puzzle. Accountability is very closely tied to work ethic. Accountability explores one's ability to be present in a task and to take care of what they need to take care of in order to make sure that the team is in the best position to get the task done or to accomplish the goal. There's two major types of accountability. There is self-accountability. How does one hold themselves accountable? This is really important for leaders. I think a lot of times with leadership, and especially with management, we talk about the second type of accountability, which is when you hold others accountable. And we think of leaders or the boss archetype as being the individual who's holding their team accountable. You must do this, and if you do not do this by this time in this way, then these are the consequences. But really effective leaders hold themselves accountable first and foremost above all, which means that they're holding themselves to a really high standard of work. And they're willing to raise their hand and say, you know, that one's on me, and let's talk about what we learned from this experience or from this example. Going the other direction, focusing on accountability as being strictly blame and punishment, it can create a culture of fear or a culture of bullying or scapegoating or trying to avoid communication because of that fear of being held to blame or being embarrassed. One of the great things that I've read recently about accountability is to in order to hold yourself and others accountable, to lead with dignity. Focus on the dignity of the individual, both yourself and the other individual or whomever you're holding accountable, and make sure that you focus on curiosity and learning when possible. And then number 5, last but not least, is vision. I think this is one of the biggest things that will separate a leader from a non-leader, is the ability to not only have a vision, but to share a vision. And once again, I go back to the leadership challenge. The idea of inspiring a shared vision is a really big part of that particular book. Leaders who are able to explain a vision, share it with other people, there's a greater chance that they'll be able to have a team that's engaged and wants to follow them wherever it is that they're going. One of my favorite leadership axioms, and I forget who says this, often, as I said before, that oftentimes a manager is somebody who gets people to do what the manager wants them to do because the manager wants them to do it. Whereas a great leader is somebody who's able to get people to do what the leader wants them to do because the people want to do it. And that is inspiring a shared vision. And that is communication. That is accountability. That is EQ. That is trustworthiness, all wrapped up into, okay, this is where we're going. This is the roadmap on how we're going to get there. And I need you all with me to accomplish this task or to accomplish this goal. This also creates opportunities for situational leadership. Vision doesn't have to be forever. There are short-term visions, there are long-term visions. There are short-term projects, there are long-term projects. Leaders can lead with vision in a short-term or a long-term way. And oftentimes the best leaders are constantly looking for the next challenge because they want to share the next vision. They want to share the next vision so they can lead the next team. And I think that makes very effective leadership as well. So just to recap my 5 key characteristics of outstanding leaders: trustworthiness, emotional intelligence, communication, accountability, and vision. Please, if you feel differently, if you think I missed any, if you have a different top 5, maybe you like my top 5 and you want to reorder them, use the comment section. I'd love to hear what you think about key characteristics of great leaders, the difference between leadership and management, and the idea that a leader does not need to be charismatic or extroverted to be an effective leader. We'll have more topics like this on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. One more time, I do invite you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that way you're notified when new content comes out. And please share this content within your networks, whether you want to share it with colleagues, friends, family members. Maybe there are students that you work with that you think could benefit from hearing this information and getting this from my perspective. Please share it, embed the video, do what you need to do. I put this content out here hoping to inspire and provide information to others. So I welcome you to do that. And thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it here on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. And I will see you next time. So in the interim, thanks for spending time with me.